Good morning and welcome to the Financial Awareness and Budgeting webinar. Just a couple of housekeeping items before we get started. Everyone is in listen-only mode. There will be two poll questions during the webinar. So you'll be able to answer those, and then we will give you the results from the attendees. You can ask questions via your page on your webinar. You're just not going to be able to ask them out loud. And at the end, we have a short survey that we'd love for you to fill out. If you miss it at the very end of the seminar, there will be a link in an email that we send you to follow up with some important things that we covered during the webinar so that you have resources at your fingertips. So we will go ahead and get started here. First of all, the presenters today are myself. I am Jaylene Moss, and I am the branch manager of NASB's Lee Summit location, and Paris Byatt is my personal banker here with me at the same location, and we're going to tell you a little bit about ourselves and give you one fun fact about ourselves as well. So I've lived in the Kansas City area most of my life. The exception would be I lived in Lawrence, Kansas when I attended the University of Kansas. So go Jayhawks. And I lived in, and I'm getting the thumbs down from my co-presenter, Paris, from that. I also lived in Detroit, Michigan, which was very exciting. And my fun fact is that I have spent a month in the jungles of Madagascar in the Ranomafana forest, volunteering my services for a research project that is ongoing, studying the reproductive patterns of primates, specifically lemurs. So that's my fun little fact and one of the highlights of my life, I think. So Paris, what about you?
Hi, everybody. Like she said, my name is Paris Byatt. I've actually been in the banking industry and with NASB for 3 years now. A common question I get is, where are you from? And I don't have a specific answer because I definitely was a military brat, so I've been all over the U.S. and outside of the U.S. I actually lived in England for 3 years, had a British accent and everything going on there. While my father was stationed in England. My fun fact today is that I actually have 10 siblings. I have 7 brothers and 3 sisters. Seems crazy, but I definitely get crazy looks whenever I send that fun fact out there. My family is very, very big. So
Absolutely. I gave you a crazy look the first time you told me that too. So we did ask Paris to do this webinar in her British accent, but she thought it would be best if she didn't. So
yeah, we're gonna pass on the British accent today. All right, so just to kind of give you guys a little back history of who NASB is. North American Savings Bank is a local bank, and we have a total of 11 branches within the Kansas City area. We offer various different banking solutions, including checking accounts, savings accounts, CDs, and money markets. And we are also one of the top mortgage lenders in the country.
The objectives of this webinar today are to discuss why budgeting and financial awareness are important, to help you understand the basics of budgeting, to build a budget or review building a budget, because not everybody has done that before. I know that I wouldn't have known where to start when the first time that I tried to build a budget and looked for tools to help me. So we're going to explore several of the budgeting tools that are out there for you, teach you how to set up financial goals and why it's important to set financial goals for yourself. And we're going to review some different techniques and financial boosters to help you get organized and get the best outcome for the money that you have coming in. We'll also discuss some financial best practices. And a lot of people ask, why would you want to do a budget? Why would you want to sit down and add up your expenses, add up your income? What's the purpose of it? First, it's going to help you spend only what you have, and that'll help reduce stress, especially right now with everything else that's going on in the world, to really be able to break down exactly what you have to pay and when you have to pay it during the month to make sure that all of your necessities get paid will definitely reduce your stress instead of spending money that you thought you had extra and then realizing that your necessities weren't covered. You'll be able to have a much more comfortable retirement by saving more money now. It'll help you be prepared for emergencies, and this year is a perfect example of unexpected surprises that could happen that are completely out of anyone's control, and also help you save for the emergencies that happen in your own life, like accidents can happen, a family member could get sick, fires happen, unfortunately, things like that, traumatic events in your life. And this will really help you identify some of the bad spending habits that you have. You can look at different trends and really reevaluate what's important for you, and look at the money that you have been spending in the past and think about, is it really necessary that I continue to spend money on that particular item? And ultimately, it helps you keep your eye on the prize. So financial clarity is the focus. It helps you create short and long-term financial goals, and it'll help you achieve them. Basically, you can think of it as a written contract with yourself. When you write something down, it becomes more real and more of a goal that you want to attain for yourself. So this will help you kind of give yourself a written contract on what is important, where you can cut costs, and save a little bit of money as well. This time, we've got our first poll for everyone, and we are asking if you guys have a strict budget that you follow, and if you don't, what the reasons are that you don't follow a strict budget, and then we'll give you the results of that here in a few minutes after everyone has the opportunity to put their input in. And while you guys are doing that, I know that making a budget can be daunting, especially when it seems like you don't have enough money at the end of your paycheck to cover everything. But this will really give you the opportunity to reassess where your money is going, The coronavirus has created tons of challenges for everybody, and not just people with lower incomes, but of all levels of income. So this is a great time to go back, reevaluate your budget if you've had one before, and see where you need to adjust in your life on your spending habits and look at what's really important. One of the things that I know in my life that I've kind of looked at is that internet has become extremely important for many people, whether they're working from home or their kids are going to school virtually. It has become important to have the internet. And so that's more of a necessity rather than a want in your budget. So a lot of people are having to spend more money on the internet expense and may have to cut their budget someplace else in order to make sure that they've got that necessity. So looks like the results of our poll is 29% of the people do adhere to a strict budget, and 71% of you do not. That's on the webinar today. So very good. Well, we will help everyone hopefully readjust their budgets and make it a less daunting task for those that don't follow a strict budget, and hopefully help some people out today.
Definitely want to keep in mind that I don't feel like it's ever too late to start a budget. Definitely start as soon as possible, but don't feel like you can't just because you never have either. We're going to start off with some budgeting basics. One of the first things that you want to think about doing is choosing what type of tool you'd like to do with your budget. Jaylene and I had been talking, and we both agreed that we like to do a mixture of both electronic and paper. I'm definitely one of those people. I'm all for technology. I think it's super convenient. But I also like to have something directly in front of me, physically in front of me as well. So that's one thing that we were talking about. And then one of the sources that is electronic that I kind of wanted to go over was called mint.com. That one specifically, you have the option to print things off from there. So I do like that, but it's also electronic. And this website allows you to enter in everything that you would need. So as you can see, we want to start collecting documents and statements that show any incoming and outgoing money. And mint.com allows you to put all of this into their software. And it also calculates everything up for you and kind of deciphers which category it's going to go into for those things. But different examples of statements that show incoming and outgoing money, statements, bank statements showing income and outgoing, like debit card purchases or any other bills. We also have receipts and pay stubs and all of those. We want to start collecting those documents so that we can calculate those expenses for your budget.
And I know that you just mentioned Mint as one of the tools that's your favorite that you use. I've actually got a list here from Investopedia. Oh my goodness, that's a hard one to say. And 6 of the best budgeting software of 2020 is, the first one is YNAB, not to be confused with NASB. It stands for You Need a Budget, and it was selected as the best overall budgeting tool. And then second was Paris's favorite, Mint, and they said that it had the best financial snapshot. Number 3 is Clarity Money for the best free app. Number 4 is Personal Capital, best for investing. Number 5 is Quicken, and that is best for tax planning. And then number 6 came in as Pocket Guard, which is the best for debt reduction. So those are the top 6 budgeting software items of 2020 according to Investopedia. I still can't say it, .com. I personally like to make my own spreadsheet, so I'm a little bit of an odd duck when it comes to that.
So now that we've thought about what type of tool you're going to use, whether it be electronic or it be, electronic or physically in front of you, paper software, we want to start categorizing those expenses and totaling those up to your incoming and outgoing categories. These are going to help identify where the money is going for you. We've included one of our spreadsheets here. I feel like this spreadsheet gives a really good example of some different categories that you may not have thought about. And we will show this spreadsheet later on in the webinar, but I did want to kind of bring it up now to kind of show some examples of categories to think about for your budget.
And you don't have to strictly stick with the specific categories that the tool that you're working with has. You really need to make it your own so that it helps you make your own budget, and don't try to make your budget fit into somebody else's idea of the best budget out there. So we just showed this as an example of the different categories that you could use. Go back to this other spreadsheet here, or this other slide.
All of your expenses should be identified as fixed or flexible and placed into a category. And to kind of go over the difference between those, fixed is an expense that remains the exact same from month to month. And flexible is going to be something that varies or changes from month to month. So I have some examples of fixed categories that would be mortgage and rent usually stay the same. Car payments and insurance are typically the exact same. And some examples of flexible is going to be utilities, credit card payments, any discretionary spending, so eating out or buying clothes, anything like that. Healthcare, unexpected healthcare can be flexible. And then you have things like food and grocery that change on a month-to-month basis too. And then also want to start thinking about things that you can change within those categories. So one example I have is that I personally have Hulu and I have Disney Plus and ESPN, and all those are bundled into one. I cut out cable. We don't ever watch cable. So I have combined those into one bundle instead of having everything, because we just really don't watch cable. And trying to decipher your needs and wants as well, and consolidating if you can on those fixed and flexible expenses.
And I actually learned something from Paris on what she was talking about on the bundling. I didn't realize that you could do bundles like that. So I'm going to have to look into that personally to help cut some expenses in my budget as well.
Cable can get expensive, that's for sure. That's why we stick to those other ones.
Absolutely. All right, so now that you've got all of your income and your expenses totaled, you're actually ready to build your budget. And like Paris mentioned earlier, you can use an electronic spreadsheet, you can use budgeting software, you can use an app. There's tons of apps out there, new ones coming out every day. Or you can just use a simple balance sheet or a ledger and write it down manually, however works best for you, and will enable you to see where you can cut in your budget and what your necessities are these days. The goal is always to have your expenses be less than your income. That will allow for a monthly surplus. I know right now a lot of people are struggling to make that happen, and that's one of the reasons that we are presenting this webinar today, to give you the tools to make you successful financially and give you ideas of ways to get more in the income column and less going out on the expense column. And we showed you this budget example a few minutes ago. This one is actually from the American Bankers Association, and this is a PDF, so you can go to the link, and we will provide this link to you with a follow-up email after the webinar so that you've got those handy. But this is a PDF, so you can fill it out and total it yourself. The next one is from the Federal Trade Commission, and this one is also a PDF. If you go to their website, Consumer Federal Trade Commission.gov, the link there that we'll provide in an email as well, you'll be able to actually fill it in on the computer and then print it out at the end. And the third example we have is from AARP, which is the American Association of Retired People or Persons, depending on how you say it. This one is great when you're trying to figure out if you're having enough federal, state, and local taxes taken out of your paycheck. This will calculate it for you by just filling it in, looking at your paycheck stub, and it actually gives you a report at the end that tells you you're spending this much in these different categories with a really cool pie chart and graphics and all that good stuff. And it goes into a lot of detail, especially when it comes to the taxes and mortgage. It goes into how much you pay for your insurance benefits at work, or if you're retired, Medicare. So this is a great one if you really want to get down to the nitty-gritty on your budget and find out where your money's going. See if you can adjust your taxes to have less withheld on your paycheck, and then you'll get a little bit less at the end of the year, but you'll have more in your monthly budget to spend. So this is a great calculator tool, and this is a fill and hit calculate up at the top, and it does it all for you. So that's a great tool. So when you have your budget all filled out with your income and your expenses, look at your expense column and question what is really important. And I mentioned the internet earlier because it has become even more important than it was in the past for us, and really has changed to a necessity at home for a lot of people. So is it something that you really want? And why do you want it? Or is it something that you really need? So kids are at home doing virtual learning. That is a need, not a want. Look at how things would be different if you had it, or how things would be different if you didn't have it. and which things are really important and essential. So an example of something that is not essential would be Uber Eats. Although I do know a lot of people that probably would argue that point with me right now, with a lot of people being quarantined in their homes, and that's one of the main ways that they've survived. However, if you really think about it, it's not essential and it's not a need. So really look at your expenses and be honest with yourself, because this is only to help yourself. This is between you, yourself, and your family, your partner, whoever else is in the unit that helps to bring income in and pay for the expenses in your home. And that looks very different for a lot of different people. I know that I just have a little dog to worry about at home, so my choices only affect me. However, other people like Paris's parents would have a lot more to think about with 10 mouths to feed.
Yes, they do. I do want to point out, she mentioned Uber Eats. Eating out's not always the greatest in the budgeting world, but there is this thing called Instacart, and if you haven't used it, I highly recommend it. Instacart, if you spend a certain amount on groceries, they will actually deliver for free too. So definitely want to keep that in mind, because grocery shopping, especially for somebody like my mom who has 10 mouths to feed, it's not easy eating out all the time. So grocery shopping can be used on apps as well.
Absolutely. You're really going to want to track what your expenses are. So don't just gather together the utilities and car payment, things like that. Look at the receipts and make sure you keep your receipts first for at least a month. Keep all of them so that you can really total those up, and or go through your bank statement if you use your debit card a lot. Total those up and really see where your money is going. And a lot of times reducing the amount that you spend is a lot more realistic than eliminating them entirely. So you could limit yourself to one Uber Eats a week as a special treat. That way it doesn't seem as daunting, and it doesn't seem like you're punishing yourself for a basic necessity of food, basically.
So now that we've organized our budget and we have built a budget, we can start thinking about setting goals for ourselves for leftover expenses and how to use those funds properly. So one thing we want to think about is what kind of debt do you have? Is there any kind of debt that we can pay down or make payments toward, or even pay off higher interest rates for loans and credit cards first? We definitely want to get those things out of the way so that you're not paying towards high interest credit cards or loans. And then, do you have any credit cards that you can transfer balances on to something with a lower rate even? So maybe you can't pay it off now, but you can kind of look at the rates and look at transferring those things to something lower. And then we want to limit ourselves as well on loans to items that will appreciate in value, like real estate. And then continuing on with our goals, we want to begin increasing savings. So we do have a couple of options like short-term savings. I do want to point out that NASB has an awesome savings account called Deposit the Difference. It's a good savings account to start somewhere small with. When you use a debit card, it rounds up that charge to the nearest dollar and deposits that change into your savings account. One thing to think about as an example of starting somewhere small in a savings account If you save 75 cents per day for 30 days, that's $22.50 a month. And you times that by 6 months, you have $135 every 6 months. And that's an example of starting somewhere small and putting that into a savings account.
Usually that's like a cup of coffee or something.
Right.
Per day.
Something small.
Not Starbucks, obviously.
No, not Starbucks.
But a cup of coffee.
So if you're thinking about a small savings account, we also want to make sure that we're using that as an emergency fund. That's not something we want to touch for wants or anything that is not an emergency. So starting somewhere small is the best way to go if you haven't already started a savings account. Another short-term savings, if you have a direct deposit and you can split that, even if it's $25 a month, and you can take 25 and put it into savings and the rest into your checking, that's another way to start small with your savings account. We do also have long-term options or retirement savings. Try to max out those contributions to those or increase them if you can on your retirement funds. And then if you don't have a retirement fund or a 401k available, I would look at maybe starting an IRA for your long-term retirement savings in the future.
And we do that quite often here for customers. There's specific limitations based on what type of IRA you put it in, but basically we start a retirement account for you that you can have that's outside of your employer offered 401k. If you'd like any more information about that, you can visit any of our branches or go to nasby.com, our website, and we have more information there as well. And before we get into the next slide here regarding borrowing money, I'd like to do a poll question and see how many of you out there actually know what your credit score is. And it looks like the poll is open, and I know what my credit score is.
I check mine regularly. They're free now. I feel like they didn't used to be at one point, but now they're typically free.
Yep, and you can get it at different websites, and sometimes you can pay to find out what your credit score is for all 3 credit bureaus.
Mm-hmm.
Or there's a lot of free trials out there to sign up, get your credit score. Just be careful that it's not one that after the 7 days they charge you, because we are talking about budgeting here. So make sure that you're not spending any extra money, especially since there are websites out there where you can get it free. And it looks like 88% of you know what your credit score is. And let's make it 89% actually know what your credit score is, and 11% of you don't, which is a large percentage of the people.
That's
so
good.
Yeah,
That's
absolutely.
Really good.
So let's talk about borrowing money, since we're talking about the credit score here. Make sure that you do review your credit reports regularly. Even if you aren't planning on buying anything, you want to make sure that you haven't become the victim of a fraudster out there, and that somebody else is not using your identity to open fraudulent loans in your name and so forth, or credit cards. And sometimes companies simply make mistakes and don't update something on your credit bureau or update the wrong information. So it's important to review it. One of the things I like to point out is make sure that you really, really look at the type of loan that you get especially looking at the advanced loans, which are like payday loans or title loans. Anything that you're advancing your paycheck or your pension, Social Security, or retirement on, really make sure that it's a loan that you're not going to spend a bunch of fees on and never be able to get out of it. Most of those have a very high fee, and the interest may look good, but they'll have high fees, and a lot of people never get out of that cycle of getting out of debt by using these loans because they're paying so much to the interest and fees. So just a word of caution on those. And also, I need to go back and make sure that for the free credit reports, there's www.annualcreditreport.com, or if you have a pen handy, you can call 877-322-8228. Again, that's 877-322-8228 to get a free annual credit report. Now let's talk about ways to boost your income. Another favorite topic of the branch here with my employees, because it seems like all of us love getting a great deal somewhere or share coupons, things like that. So looking at shopping and coupon apps, I feel like Paris here in our branch is the queen of the apps when it comes to coupons.
I have so many. I cannot explain or stress to you how many coupon apps there are. Retail Me Not is one of my absolute favorites. And another thing that NASB actually offers, and it comes with our checking accounts, is Bazing. We have 2 accounts that offer these shopping and coupon apps on our secondary app with NASB. There's all kinds of things on there, from food to shopping, all kinds of coupons. And those are 2 of my absolute favorite, Bazing and Retail Me Not. And every little bit helps. If you think 50 cents is not a big deal, it is. It definitely is. It's going to help in the long run. If you don't have to spend the money, don't. Those coupons are worth it for sure.
Yeah. On the Bazing app, one of my favorites is the oil change coupons, where you can save $20, $30 on getting your oil changed, which to me is a necessity because I do drive quite a bit.
And we actually painted our house recently, and there was a Sherwin-Williams coupon on there. I think it was like 10 off of 50 or something like that. So that's a really awesome coupon too.
Great. Another way to save is, or to boost your money, is to save for future health costs. So the emergency fund could be used for ensuring that you have your future health costs covered. Another way is to locate lost property. Every state has an unclaimed property division, and you can go to it to see if you or any of your relatives have lost property that you can claim there. I go to it every once in a while, and one time I went to it, there was $1,200 with my name on it due to an overpayment at a hospital that the insurance company came back and paid it after I had already paid the bill off. So you can definitely find money there. And make sure you're reviewing your statements and looking for, like on your credit card statement, has somebody charged something that you're not familiar with? Do you need to shut it down and report those charges as being fraudulent? And make sure that you find out. If you're not sure, call the bank, call the financial institution, and find out what those charges came from. And then very last, make sure that your income tax withholdings are correct. And I talked about that a little bit with the budgeting tool from AARP, where it breaks down the amount that you're spending on federal, state, local taxes. So you can use that as a guideline.
All right, so one of my favorite things about budgeting, I'm a huge organized type of person. So I kind of want to talk about some things that might make that easier for you, especially with your budgeting. So one thing to use would be a calendar. I actually have a whiteboard calendar at home. Yes, I still use electronic things, but I also, like I said, I also like to have something physically in front of me. I feel like writing it down helps my memory as well. But there's also electronic calendars that you can use. All smartphones have the electronic calendar that'll send you a reminder just to make sure that you are paying your bills on time and keeping organized with those things. We also want to consider closing any unused or unneeded accounts. So if you have multiple accounts, whether it be credit cards or even banking accounts, kind of consolidating those things into limited accounts so that you are understanding where your money is at all of the time. It helps having consolidated accounts there.
Makes it easier to track.
No kidding. Yeah.
A lot of people get confused having multiple accounts.
I deal with a lot of customers that get confused because they have so many accounts in different places that they start to lose track of everything, and then they lose track of their bills and they're not sure which account is paying which bill at that point. So definitely consolidating those accounts is going to make things easier for you. Direct deposits are also going to help save time and help you keep organized too. And automatic withdrawals as well. So automatic withdrawals are going to help those automatic payments, making sure those bills are paid on time. You don't have to remember to do it. The system's going to do it for you. And using any electronic stuff with your banking. So NASB specifically has a bill pay system on our internet banking, and I use this for pretty much all of my bills. So it's got, instead of having to give out your information to a company, your routing and account number, it's the complete opposite. You put in the company's account number and NASB sends the money for you. So you're actually going to eliminate fraud in that area as well, because if you accidentally give out your account number to the wrong company or the wrong person, you could definitely have fraudulent charges on there. So bill pay is a huge saver for me. It also allows you to set up automatic payments through bill pay, and it keeps track of everything on there for you too.
So really, those expenses that are under the fixed category are the ones that you can put into your bill payment app or on your NASB website into the bill pay and set it up to go out every month at a certain time or a certain date. The flexible ones you can still put in there, but you'll have to go in each month and update the amount because it'll be different each month, and have it send a reminder that, hey, this is coming up, so I need to go in and pay that bill. So that really does help with your fixed expenses.
And I also highly recommend electronic statements if you don't already have them. I had just talked about how giving out your account number and routing number could result in fraud in some cases. Electronic statements not only avoid your information being in the mail, but it's also going to keep all of your statements in one area. I know some people keep those paper statements and then they can't find them, and then their information is just all over the house. So electronic statements is going to help consolidate those things into one area, keep them password protected, and keep your information safe too.
And apparently we're going to have some crazy times with our mail service coming up.
Yeah.
So having electronic statements will save the day, I think, for a lot of people.
All right. So I also, along with staying organized, I want to go over some best practices when you're budgeting. Definitely keep these in mind. Make sure you are reviewing your budget on a monthly basis and adjust it as needed. Things do change, so make sure you're updating that if you have any changes. Shred or destroy any unneeded paperwork. I just talked about doing electronic statements. You're going to save a lot of time there and a lot of paper too on that matter by keeping that stuff on electronic statements. But if you do have paper stuff, make sure that they are shredded and that you don't have any sensitive material just laying around, because ID theft is real. It happens on a daily basis, and I deal with it so often here at the branch alone. So definitely make sure that you are destroying any of that paperwork that has your information on it. Determine if professional support is needed. So if you, like we just talked about fraud, if you think that support is needed, you need to call your professionals, whether it be your bank, or if you decide that you might need some credit counseling to help decipher how to get that credit back on track as well. Treat your savings as an obligation. I can't stress that enough. I have definitely been guilty in the past of thinking, oh, it won't hurt if I take $50 from my savings. So treat it as an obligation and treat it as your emergency fund only, so that you have that money handy when something out of the blue does happen. Like we talked about with coronavirus, so many unexpected things have happened here. So balance your checkbook on a regular basis and don't depend on account balances. So if you are the type who does balance your checkbook, make sure that you are keeping up with that, and don't depend on the account balances, because things can happen there too. Fraudulent charges could happen on your checkbook, and if you depend on the balances, you're missing that money, and your institution could have gotten that taken care of for you on there. So don't miss out on those fraudulent charges and getting those back just by depending on your account balance. And then know your income. So know what you have coming in. If you see any changes or you're not sure on something, make sure you're keeping up with that, and don't spend more than what you have.
And we did have a question from one of the participants. They were asking what the website was for the unclaimed money or unclaimed property. You can go to unclaimed.org, O-R-G, and that has all of the states listed on it that you can search by state. So since I lived in the Detroit area for a while, I have searched the Michigan unclaimed property site as well. So look at the different states that you've lived in or your family members have lived in. So great question. So let's conclude this with really anyone can control their own financial future. You just have to focus on it, and you have to give it a little bit of attention, and you'll be prepared for almost any emergency that comes up or financial surprise. But right now is a great time to revisit your budget, even if you have done one in the past, to make sure that you're looking at areas that you can save a little bit of money in and adjust the items that are necessities. We do have a few websites that you can go to listed here. These will also be sent out to you in the follow-up email. AARP.com, this is American Association of Retired People, and it was so one that had the calculator that will give you the pretty pie chart at the end and calculate your taxes and such for you. That would be a great source for you to make sure that you're paying the appropriate amount in your taxes. The next one is ABA.com, which is the American Bankers Association. There are probably 4 or 5 different links on there that you can go to that is talking about budgeting during the coronavirus. And speaking of budgeting during the coronavirus, NASB has a link that you can go to, nasb.com/corona, and it will give you some helpful information on getting through the pandemic and be financially fit. I'm sorry, it's nasb.com/COVID, not Corona. I keep getting Corona and COVID mixed up. Going down the list here, Consumer Finance. It's the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. They've got lots of great information on budgeting. NCOA.org is the National Council on Aging. PracticalMoneySkills.com is exactly what it says. It gives you some practical money tips to give you some practical money skills. IRS.gov can answer any of your questions about taxes, and they will have various tips on there as well for budgeting. And Mint.com, again, Paris's favorite. So put a little star next to that one. ConsumerCredit.com. They have lots of information about budgeting, making sure that you're not the victim of financial scams that are out there. They've got tons of great information, as well as the last one listed, the consumer.ftc.gov, and that's the Federal Trade Commission. So really explore some of those websites and gather information. Some of them do have budgets that you can fill and print, and make sure that you explore those so that you're using the tool that best fits your situation. And I mentioned earlier that I like actually making my own spreadsheets now, but that's not how I started. I started with a simple calendar marking the dates of the bills that I had and when they were due. So, and I want to thank everyone for joining our webinar today. And I've got one question that has come in. So if anyone else has any questions that they would like to send in, please feel free to do so at this time. Also, if you come up with any questions after the webinar that we may not have covered or you need clarity on, you can send them to csr@nasb.com, and we will get those answered for you. We've got someone that wants to repeat who has Roundup Savings.
That would be North American Savings Bank, NASB. We have an account called Deposit the Difference. We link it to a checking account. So if you open a checking account with us, every time you swipe your debit card for your checking account, it rounds up to the nearest dollar and deposits that change into your savings account. So it's a very easy and simple way to start saving even little bits. It also doesn't require a super high minimum balance. It's a pretty basic savings there. It does have a $100 minimum balance requirement. So personally, that is the savings account that I have myself. And all that change, even when I was paying with cash, I never paid attention to change. I always just threw it in a piggy bank. So for it to be directly put into my savings account has been super convenient. If you have any questions about that, feel free to reach out to North American Savings Bank or go to our website, and you can find more information about that if you click apply now, and you'll find the accounts there.
And then our next question is, will we be giving the websites that we recommend for the budgeting software? And yes, we will put that in our follow-up email. And the website that we got that from is Investopia. So it's IN as in Nancy, V as in Victor, ESTOP as in Paul, IA.com, Investopia.com. And it was the top 6 budgeting software, online budgeting software that they recommended. And then we've got another question about the unclaimed property. I mentioned that I went to the Michigan website and the Missouri website. So here in the Kansas City area, if you don't want to do the unclaimed.org, you can go to the treasurer.mo.gov/unclaimed property, which I just Google unclaimed property in Missouri and make sure that it's the Missouri Treasurer's website and put in my information there. And then the direct website for Kansas is kansas-ks.gov/up_main MAIN.html. That was a lot. That was a mouthful there. Again, Google is one of my favorites. So Google makes my life so much easier. And it looks like that's all the questions that we have today. But like I said, if you do have any other questions that you come up with after we get off the webinar here, please email them to csr@nasb.com, and we would be more than happy to answer those for you. And don't forget that we're going to have a short survey at the end of this. And if you'll please answer that for us, that will give us an idea of things that we can improve on. Even if you have a suggestion maybe on other webinars that you'd like to see, we would love to get your feedback on that. We will also provide a link to that in the email that we send you at the end as well. So Paris and I would like to thank everyone for attending.
Yes, thank you guys for listening and joining us today with the webinar. It's been a pleasure trying to teach you guys anything about budgeting that we can.
Oh, hold on, before we go, we've got a quick question. It's coming up. Quick question. What is a common goal amount clients should save for home ownership and credit score? Common goal amount. It's really based on your income and your expenses. So I would start with one of the calculators that we have on our website at nasb.com, and it is how much home can I afford? And there's also a savings calculator on there to help you figure out how to save more money, because you'll want to save for a down payment. And everybody's situation is different, so there isn't a specific dollar amount that you should be saving for necessarily. that you can use one of those calculators. So really explore the NASB.com website, and it'll have additional information for you for those specific questions. So again, thank you so much for attending, and let us know if you have any additional questions.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Can you guys hear me?